Salida, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Sounds German and to another review. The rock band Kärbholz, hailing from the beautiful North Rhine-Westphalia, released their 7th album called Überdosis Leben, and this album at some point made me want to overdose actually because it's really not good. Überdosis Leben is only a rock album in name because it feels far more like a test of patience. From the first to the very last song, overall taking almost an hour till it's finished, what you get here is not only an extremely generic, but far worse, it's an extremely bland album. It almost doesn't matter which track you turn on because all of them are just full of shallow platitudes, clearly written to pull at your heartstrings, but unless you never had a rough day in your life or your artistic horizon starts and ends with Rammstein, there is really nothing moving or emotional about these song texts. And nothing original either, with the bottom maybe being Da ist noch Leben drin, in which the vocalist goes on about how everyone around him is a zombie, but of course he is the one going against the stream, the one alive, the one with still fire and passion in his life, and it's all about going through life as your own master. Don't be someone who just blindly follows, but instead follow your dreams and visions. About unhappy and happy love and going through thick and thin together. And did you notice something? It all sounds like concepts a robot created if you fed it some rock songs and then told it to write rock songs based on those lyrics that it already had. This alone would be okay, but the lyrics lack any finesse or filigree whatsoever to deliver those topics in an interesting way. Instead, we get songs like Perfekt Unperfekt featuring Franzi Kusche, which might be the most kitschy rock love song I have maybe ever heard. But at least Kusche's vocals, which aren't really ideal for rock music, I can see her better in a pop song. At least her vocals give you something new to listen to over the course of this album. Because Überdosis Leben, it's one of those albums where the tracks all start to bleed together really fast, and rarely have I seen this happen to such an extreme degree as it was on this album. The only track that really stands out is Kind aus Hinterwald, which basically just goes down a list of the most cliché city life versus countryside life tropes you can imagine. But at least it's led by a fiddle and an acoustic guitar compared to the rest of the album. The rest? Well, it's drums, electric guitar, and maybe a little bass if you're lucky, and the slightly scruffy, rough vocals of singer Torben Höfgen. And it all just sounds so alike and so similar that even after 1 week of listening to this album, I honestly had trouble naming most of the tracks just by their melody because, well, as I said before, it just starts bleeding together because it all sounds so much alike. The only other track that stood somewhat out was Evolution umsonst, where Höfgen tries himself on some more aggressive singing, but honestly, he just can't pull it off convincingly. However, the track itself finally picks up a notch of hardness and speed, distinguishing itself from the rest of the album. But it seems someone got afraid by this music when the hook rolls around, because then they fall back into the same softer rock patterns they show over the course of the rest of the album. The most memorable riff you get on this album is the beginning of Perfekt Unperfekt, but that's only because it's the same opening riff Metallica used in Die Die My Darling. But the final death blow for this album comes by means of the mix, because this must be the most bland, toothless mix I have heard in a long time. It's like they chose one preset where all the instruments are exactly on the same noise level, including the vocals, and just rolled with it throughout the whole album. No instrument ever gets its moment in the spotlight, nothing ever gets granted a little bit of dominance to stand out from the rest. It's just one bowl full of soggy, grey gruel. It's just one mass, a single entity, and not multiple instruments complementing and supporting each other to create something coherent. It also doesn't help that the music is disgustingly over-polished, so much so that there is just absolutely no edge to the music on this disc. And I would be willing to argue well, that's simply not what a rock album needs. Rock should maybe have a little bit of, let's call it, dirt in its sound here and there, a little bit of an edge, a little bit of a roughness. And on this album, it's only the vocals that deliver that, but even there, only to a really tiny degree because it's so overproduced and overpolished. I'm sorry, but I really couldn't find anything I liked here. This album was frustrating to listen to for me. I usually try to come up with something along the lines of, well, if you like X, then this album might be for you. But in this case, I have no idea what X could be. Überdosis Leben is almost an hour of boredom, of blandness, and of lacking anything that makes it outstanding. Even after thinking really hard, I have no idea who I could recommend this album to, so I'll simply stick with not recommending it to anyone and leave it at that. So, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please feel free to leave a like or subscribe to the channel if you want more German music stuff. If you listened to the album, please let me know what you thought of it. Leave a comment. You can also follow Sounds German on Facebook and or Twitter if you like. Thank you very much for watching. I hope to see you around next time. Salida!